Hey everybody, welcome to the Slick Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Langford. The point of this show is to help improve ourselves as dogmen and to raise the quality of the dogs on the end of our lead. So let's settle in, turn the volume up, and let's see if we can't learn a trick or two together from our guests. Hey everybody, you are listening to the Slick Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Langford, and today I've got Samuel Green on the phone. How you doing today, Samuel?
I'm doing good. How are you, Colby?
Oh, I'm doing well. This is just so everyone's caught up on this. We started working on recording this last night, and kind of got stormed out on your end.
Yeah, we had some pretty bad weather come through.
But we're gonna try to give it a go again today, and hopefully the weather cooperates with us a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's just start out. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from, that kind of stuff, Samuel?
Well, I'm Samuel Green. I'm 27 years old, and I grew up about 15 minutes from Jamestown, Tennessee, in a little town called Clark Range. Been around tree dogs kind of my whole life, and just fell in love with it at an early age.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you actually got introduced to dogs and kind of your background and how you got started?
Well, there were some older gentlemen around here that asked if they could coon hunt on my grandparents' farm and my parents' farm, and they told them, that'd be fine. And my dad asked if we could tag along with them some night, and they came one night, and it really is a terrible hunt. Nothing went right. And looking back on what I remember, we crawled around half the night, ivy thickets, and ended up lost, and just wasn't really a good experience. But it hooked me from the first night. We didn't even tree coon the first night, and I've loved dogs ever since. I was small enough then. I can remember my dad carrying me when we'd come to a big open field or something. Mm-hmm. He'd set me on his shoulders and pack me, But it did something to me, and I hadn't been able to shake it.
Yeah, what kind of dogs were they hunting then?
They were, to be honest, that night they were hunting a Walker dog, a red bone. They may even had a blue tick. The first coon I actually ever saw treed was from a red bone, and I believe that's the last one I've seen treed from one as well.
Yeah. Well, how'd you end up getting introduced to CBA?
Well, there was a fella that lived across the road from us. He's about 5 years. He's 5 years older than I am. And there was quite a bit of hunting around my parents' house then, and he was 14, 15 years old, and his parents would let him drive over and hunt, and he would stop and get me when I was 9 and 10 years old and take me with him. And it's Matthew Hall, and that's how I got introduced to cur dogs. That's what he had, and he'd take me to the OMCBA hunts with him from the time I was little, and I just kind of fell in love with him, and that's what I'd stuck with for the most part. Now I've hunted a little bit of everything, and have hounds, tree and curs, and OMCBA dogs. Now I've got a mixture of all of them, but I always find myself going back to an OMCBA dog.
Yeah, well, why don't you take a couple minutes and tell us about some of the ones you've had?
The first dog I had, Matthew had actually gave me a puppy, and it ended up and died at like 4 months old, ruptured a lung, had it tied out trying to teach it to lead, and it pulled and pulled until it ruptured something in it, and it ended up and didn't live. And there was a fellow we went to church with. He had a dog he was going to give me, and my dad told me, he said, you need to pay him for that dog. And I asked him if $50 would be a fair price, and we were both happy. He was 16 months old and wasn't started or anything. He knew how to load in the truck, but we just took off walking him, and it seemed like in 2 or 3 weeks he was treeing squirrels every time you took him. And his name was Rusty Ain't Rusty. I ended up, and he made a good dog. Really, I robbed the first 5 years of his life, not knowing what I was doing. I just go squirrel hunting. But as far as being competitive, he wasn't very competitive until he was 6, 7 years old. And that was just from what I learned to do different, and getting him ready for a hunt. But he was a nice dog. I actually ended up won the first ever JPI with him when I was 17. And it didn't pay anything, then like it does now. Now, it was still substantial at the time. I think it was the biggest money squirrel hunt ever held, But that kind of, which I wanted to win before that, but that just kept a fire lit in me and going stronger. Once you'd tasted it, I couldn't get enough of it.
How'd you what was the buy-in? Do you remember what the buy-in was for that
Yeah,
hunt?
it was $500 is what it was, and actually I tried to get my dad to split my entry with me on it, and he told me, he said, there'll be 8 dogs there, better than yours. He said, you've got a good dog, but the other 8 will be good too. And there was another man that I'd been squirrel hunting with some, and I actually asked him, I said, you want to split this entry with me? And it tickled him to death. And he actually, the first year he split it with me, and then the next 2 or 3 after that, and he split it with me as well. And I didn't do any good after that. And, got close a few times to being in the finals, but never could seal the deal again. But Michael Cook was his name. He was a big help to me going that first year, and after that as well.
How if you don't mind me asking, how does that work whenever someone splits an entry with you? What are the logistics on payouts and stuff like that? How do you normally do that?
Well, at the time, he just whatever I won, we just split dead, down the middle. And now, some of these deals that I've had, they'll take the entry fee back out, but they're paying all of it now. They'll pay all the entry, and if I win, take the entry back out, and split what's left, which I think is a very fair way of doing it, especially if I'm hunting somebody else's dog. They keep me in a good dog to hunt, and I do the legwork, and it's on me then.
Mm-hmm. What'd you hunt after Rusty?
After Rusty, I ended up with I had a little female that I'd raised, came from Mike Barnett. Bought her as a puppy, and she made a nice dog. Nothing you was going to go win the world hunt with, but a very good squirrel dog. She actually got Lyme's disease at like 15, 16 months old, and it took a lot out of her. And I kept her until she was 3 or 4 years old, and then a fellow that I'd made friends with, George Robinson in Louisiana, he wanted a dog. It was just a good squirrel dog. And I didn't really want to sell my dog, but I wanted her to be with somebody that enjoyed her because I wanted to go to the hunts, and she was just a very enjoyable squirrel dog. And I let Mr. George take her, and he kept her until she was probably, he probably kept her 3 or 4 years, and he hunted her. And then Richie Bean, he was hunting for Joey Poston, and his daughter liked to squirrel hunt with him. And anyways, the type of dogs that Richie was hunting in was kind of like me. It wasn't very enjoyable for a kid to follow. And Mr. George ended up and called me and asked if I'd like my dog back. And I told him I'd love to have her back. And I let Richie and his daughter take her. And they ended up and kept her until she died, but got a lot of enjoyment out of her. She was just a nice, enjoyable dog. And after that, I went through a bunch of, to be honest, a bunch of good ones, more good ones than most people I feel like will ever have. I hunted the 2020 Patch Dog, Jammin' Skeeter, 2020 Crank. Then I had another one that I'd started and trained myself too, called her Red Hot Flame. And to be honest, the little flame dog was probably the best squirrel dog I've ever owned. But in a cast, she wasn't the same. That's the difference in winners and losers. And she was as good of a squirrel dog as you'd ever find. And would find a way to lose a cast when you had her in it.
Yeah.
But she was probably the best one I've ever had. And I think everybody that's owned her since then would probably attest to that too. And she won some hunts, after I sold her. And she could win, but she just didn't always show up.
Yeah.
And then from Flame, I ended up and started hunting for Ashley Guthrie out of South Georgia. And I hunted the 2020 stretch, or not 2020 stretch, but they called him America's Rick Stretch. He was out of a 2020 bred female and a Gary Walker bred dog. And hunted him for a while, done pretty good with him, won about $17,000 with him. And then Ashley buys the Music dog at the JPI. And funny story about that Music, I actually raised him from a puppy out of some of the stuff I'd had before. And Ashley gets him bought at the JPI. And then after that, I took him home with me, and I ended up and bought Ashley out, 6-7 months later. And he never left my house until I just sold him back a couple months ago to Travis Klein. But that was a pretty neat deal to raise him from a puppy and then get him bought back at 5 months or at 5 years old and end up winning the world hunt with him and stuff. That meant a lot to me.
What advice would you have since you grew up kind of going going to the comp hunts as a youth. What could you talk about that a little bit? Maybe how the hunts treated you, and maybe any advice you'd have for young hunters that were kind of wanting to do the same thing, or their parents even.
Well, there was some more kids, my age that was going to them, and my dad just kind of turned me loose. I mean, he hunted with me a lot through the week, but on the weekends, he just kind of let me do my own thing as far as going to a squirrel hunt. And I kind of learned through the school of hard knocks. I didn't have anybody there taking up for me when something happened. It was all on me to win or lose. And I think that really made me into and I'm not saying I don't want to sound arrogant or cocky or anything like that now, but it really helped me in the fact that I saw I was going to have to do it all on my own. It made me into the competitor I am now. And, I if my dad had been there with me all the time, I don't know if I would have. I don't know how to say what I'm trying to say. I don't know. In a way, it made it a little bit more special because I knew I'd done all of it by myself, and that meant a lot to me as well. And I mean, my parents were proud of me, no doubt about that. But I just kind of had to learn it on my own, and I think that's really helped me in the long run.
Did your dad grow up around tree dogs, or did he kind of get into it at the same time you did?
Well, my dad, he grew up on a farm, actually where he lives at now, and where I was raised at too. And they always had dogs that would, tree squirrels, but they dairied and had a lot of work to do, but always I had a tree dog of some kind. But it was just a way of life. It'd work cows or do whatever they wanted it to do. It wasn't that they actually had a squirrel dog. They just had dogs that would tree squirrels, I guess. And that's kind of how that went.
Yeah. Well, so what is it that you like about the OMCBA? What is it that keeps you coming back to it?
Well, I like the dogs. They're all, most of them have a real good demeanor about them. I like the people at the club. It's an event that's very family oriented. There's something for everybody is what I like about it. If you want to win a prestigious world hunt, you can do that. And if you want to have fun at a treeing contest and a bench show and get to talk to everybody, you can do that too. Just a whole lot of events go on. It's good for the kids, good for the older folks that can't go on a cast now. There's just a lot of different avenues in it.
Yeah, you mentioned you've got curs and hounds, trained curs, and just a little bit of everything these days. Would you mind taking a minute just kind of talking about comparing each of them? Why you like others more than others? If someone were to be shopping.
Well, to be honest, as far as coon hunting a dog in my part of the world, now I've had good cur dogs that treed coons, and probably one of the best cur coon dogs that's ever been. I mean, I hunted with him a lot. It was the tree knocking ammo dog that Matthew Hall had. He won world hunts, state hunts. He won everything. But now he modeled more like a hound. You turned him loose from a truck and you went and got him treed and he'd have a coon. And at night a hound is going to suit me more than a cur dog most of the time. I'm not saying there's not curs out there that you can hunt like that still. But as a general rule, that's just not them. But that's not what they were made for either. They weren't made to bomb in there and be treated a mile in just a few minutes. But that's kind of the style that fits me at night where I live at. But now of a day, I've hunted a hound of a day. I've hunted OMCBA dogs of a day. And right now I've got a treeing cur that I hunt of a day, squirrel hunting. And I've liked them all, but a cur dog just seems to me to have the best of, the best attributes to be a good squirrel dog. They can tree them by sight, they can tree them by sound, they can tree them with their nose. Now me myself, I want one that's mostly by scent. If they see a squirrel, I want them to tree it, but I don't want that to be, their main method of finding a squirrel and treating it. But you can just do so much with a cur dog that you can't do with other ones. They can run loose at your house, and then you can catch them out of the yard and go on squirrel hunting. And I do like that about them. They're good farm dogs, yard dogs, family dogs. Just an enjoyable dog to have around. And if I quit hunting today and just still lived on a farm, I'd have a cur dog running around. I mean, that's just what I like.
So what's the treeing cur bringing to the table for you?
Well, the tree curve, the one I've got right now is actually out of Reed Frank's Maximus dog, which was a OMCBA world champion, and his mother's a half bird dog, half walker. And he's half cur, quarter walker, and quarter bird dog. And to me, with him, you get some more foot speed there. You get some more winding ability out of that type of cross. Not every type of cross, but a lot of your tree and curs too, I believe, are better tree dogs. They're more focused. But I still feel like the right dog in any breed can do all that. But as a general rule, that's just kind of what I see out of them. Your tree and curs tree harder, the tree louder. A lot of them have more go to them, I guess, than your typical cur dog does. But again, that's just I know there's exceptions in every breed,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think a tree and cur offers a little bit more of that.
So, what are some of the changes you've seen in the OMCBA over the years?
Oh, I've seen a lot. I guess I've seen dogs. I feel like have improved a lot since I was a kid. In the last 15 years of being there, dogs have changed quite a bit. That's a big thing. The hunt numbers, they fluctuate year to year with everything else, and I think they fluctuate a lot depending on the weather too that's coming in. You'll see some Jamestown OMCBA hunts have just crazy numbers, and then like this past year at the Spring Classic, the numbers were way, way down at it. But at the same time, we had a big storm system move in that weekend, and it really, I think, skewed the numbers there on what normally would be there. I don't know if that's the changes exactly you were asking about, but that's just a broad answer to that. People come and go, but it's all pretty well stayed about the same, I feel like.
Yeah.
As far as how it's run and stuff like that. Like I said, I do think dogs have changed some, Well, I know they've changed some. But
on the same note, in your opinion, is there anything that really needs to be addressed with the organization?
Well, I mean, there's stuff that I do feel like could be done better, but that's with any organization. So I don't want people to think it's me bashing OMCBA because I'm not at all, not at all. But there's always stuff they can improve on. I believe a person ought to try and be better all the time. Better the organization. I don't think you can stay stagnant and it get better. I think you have to be doing stuff a little different all the time, which it looked like they'd done. I saw they had a little bit of a money hunt a couple of weeks ago, and it had quite a few entries for the time of year it is, and the place they were having it seemed like it was a success.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a good change. That's a change that you go to include in a whole different avenue of people. I believe that's good for the organization myself, and still have everything else they always do, and have stuff like that too. That'll get some new players in the game, I believe.
Yeah, I can see where it would be a draw especially for a certain group, and not necessarily something that should make every hunt $100 or $200 buy-in hunt, but to still have that available on occasion. I'm not trying to push out the family hunts or anything like that, or the cheaper hunts that are just for a plaque. But I think that's a nice added.
Oh, absolutely. And just like you said about pushing out the family hunts, you can still have a hunt with a $25 entry fee and give away a nice trophy. And the people that want to, let them put $100 on the side in a side pot, and let those guys that want to do that be eligible for it. And the ones that don't, they're not forced to. And that way it keeps everybody included like that.
What has been going on in Jamestown lately? I know Miss Judy's recently retired, and I think Mr. Carl Smith had a little bit of health issues. I haven't heard too much about that, but hopefully he's doing well.
Yeah, Clark Matthews is actually the acting president as of now, and they're electing some new board members. I believe ballots have been sent out, and I'd say a lot of them have been sent back by now. But yes, Judy, she had retired and helped train the new register. Miss Paula Brown seems to be doing a very good job from what you hear from everybody. They all seem very well pleased with what she's done.
Well, let's jump back kind of over more to actual dog training stuff for a minute. Why don't you walk us through how you like to start a pup when you get one? I mean, do you do much breeding, or do you mostly source your pups?
Well, I mean, the last few years, I've kind of hunted what I've bred myself. As far as puppies, I couldn't tell you the last time I went and bought a pup. Uh, but in saying that, I'm no good with a pup. The pup has to pretty well start itself for me to do anything with it. I've been blessed. I've been able to live somewhere where I could leave one running loose, and when I hear one go to getting treat, I can kind of put them up and then go to work on them. As far as me just getting one and walking it around or showing it a squirrel and getting it to tree, that's not me. I wish it was, but it's not. I don't have the patience. But if one's doing something when I take it, I can take it and kind of mold it. I feel like make it a little better. Uh, and that just as far as that goes, I just the way I've worked and everything, I've been able to hunt of an evening most of the time or of a morning. Kind of can set my own schedule, and if I want to go hunting, I can. And I've been very fortunate in that aspect of things. Uh, and I think it's as far as the dogs I've had that I have started, it's been the dog really. It's not been me. I've just been able to put the time in it, and I think that's what makes the good ones. Is time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
So you bred that trinker that your puppy you're talking about having?
no, the goose dog came from Reed Franks. He did all the work on it. Reed bred him and trained him, and he's done it all there. I don't get any of the credit on that whatsoever. When I sold music, I didn't have anything to hunt, and really I was kind of at a point I wasn't at the time. I wasn't getting to hunt a whole lot. I'd got pretty busy, and I didn't have a whole lot of time to be hunting. And but Reed called and he asked me if I'd like to get him. He just had a knee replacement and he wasn't able to hunt a whole lot. And I told him I'd take him. So he actually drove him up to me, and he's been at my house since then. I hadn't got to hunt him a whole lot, but that's kind of what I plan to hunt and what hunts I get to go to this coming year. He's a very nice dog.
Well, you got any training nuggets for us? Any hot tips?
Why, to be honest, I'm probably the one that needs the tips, Colby. It's just a lot of time, a lot of repetition, and don't get frustrated, and that's a lot easier said than done. But at the same time, when you're hunting when it's young, it's just like having a little kid. You don't lose your patience, and just, if something goes south, just go home and, start over the next day. Don't let a situation bother you, because that pup can tell when you're bothered, or young dog, or even old dog. I mean, they feed off what you feed them, is the way I've always kind of felt about it. And that's a lot easier said than done, because when I am out there hunting, I expect the best out of them all the time. But, they're just like people. They can't have their best day every day, is the way I kind of feel about it. And I just have to keep that in my mind.
Mm-hmm. What's it look like when you're getting ready to go to a big hunt? How do you get ready for one? Just hunt a lot, or?
Yeah, it's very dog to dog. To me, it depends a little bit on what that dog is and what I feel like he needs. But I like for instance, the coon dog I've got right now. When I'm getting him ready to go, I try and hunt. If he's 21 nights, I want to hunt 18 of them. Then I want to put him up for 4 or 5 nights, and let him kind of build back up. But squirrel hunting, I've never really done it that way. I'm just, I never really changed my routine. If I'm hunting 4 days a week, that's just kind of what I do. I'll hunt 4 days a week and I'll go, and there's some weeks I'd hunt 7 days and some weeks I'd hunt 2. It just depends, but I just try and be consistent, I guess, and just be consistent with them all the time. And if I see I'm going to have a week that I can't hunt, but a couple days, I may put one on my 4-wheeler on the side of it and, run them 3 or 4 miles of an evening or something, if I don't actually have time to go hunting. I will do that, just kind of keep their wind built up and keep them what I feel like, fresh, keep them from being stiff and that sort of stuff,
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of the coon dogs, I know when we talked before, we kind of talked about kind of a hot button topic, which is DNA, and kind of what's gone on with the OMCBA in the past with it. But maybe we could talk about how possibly, and I know there's a lot of opinions on DNA, but I feel like a lot of it isn't understood by people that oppose it. thinking it's going to be a really at a huge expense to the whole deal. I know I've heard people uh, talk about how they're worried about people not wanting to spend the money on it and how it's going to shrink the organization and it's going to hurt the organization financially. Let's kind of try to talk about how DNA could be implemented in a way that would be affordable and kind of modeled after some other working systems that are working well.
Yeah, like we talked before, I mean, PKC, which I know that's coon dogs, not squirrel dogs, but still it's a hunting dog organization, they implemented their super stakes program, give the breeders an incentive to do it, and it was affordable to everybody. And they didn't make them do it. If they didn't want to do it, they didn't have to do it, But I think modeling it after something like that would be a huge success. It would let the guys that want it have it, and the ones that don't want it, they don't have to, And as far as cost, it doesn't cost that much. And like I said, if they don't want to do it, they're not obligated to. It's not going to be a negative effect to them to not do it.
Yeah. I'm really not that familiar. I've got some pups here at the house that are super stake that are tree curs, but I really don't know that much about the super stake system. Could you kind of go over how it all works?
Yeah, they just they have a breeding pair, sire and dam. They'll be DNA. They'll have their DNA profile on file. And then the puppies, whenever you go to pay them up and send that in, you'll get a swab to swab that pup, and they send that DNA off to the lab, and it gets put on file, and that's pretty well it. And then if you go to an event and say you get your dog qualified to hunt at Super Stakes, you win 2 casts. After you win that late round cast, they're going to swab the dog you win it with, and send that DNA into the lab and make sure that dog is who you say it is, or it's out of what they say it's out of. And it's not like they're not going backwards and trying to say, oh, your dog's half German Shepherd. They're not doing that. It's just from that point forward.
It's simply for proof of parentage and for
that's
proof
all
of
it
that
is.
is the dog it's supposed to be that's already been swabbed.
That's absolutely correct. And people say, oh, you can still cheat that. Yeah, you can. You can cheat it one time on you could swab a dog and say, you could swab a hound and say you swabbed a cur and then nobody ever see the cur again. You could cheat it one time like that. But then after that, everything would, it would fall into place on its own as far as, who's who and what's what.
Mm-hmm.
But no, that's definitely, like you said, that's a hot topic, and that's something that, I think can be implemented in a way that it doesn't have an effect on anyone that doesn't want it, but it would give the people that do want it an avenue to kind of go through to have it.
Yeah, I know that the NSD LMC program, it seems like it's done pretty well, and I really wish there was a way that it could be crossed over if you had a dog that was already in LMC, if there was a way that it could, I don't know if they could use the same lab and have crossover like that just to keep from having to send in more dogs, or how that could possibly work. But
yeah, I don't know. I really, and it's not a knock on either organization, but I don't see either one of them working that closely hand in hand. I mean, in a way, they're a competing business.
correct.
And LMC is give guys an avenue that they wanted that OMCBA didn't give them when they wanted it. And LMC now, I mean, you see these cur dog pups for sale, that's the first question on all of them. Is it LMC registered? Jimmy's done an outstanding job getting that program off the ground and going and making it very desirable to the folks that squirrel hunt.
Mm-hmm. Well, since we're on the topic of hot buttons, what's your thought on I know here a while back a dog got kicked out because it was proven through DNA through another registry, I believe, that it was not what it was supposed to be on paper. But none of the offspring were kicked out.
Yeah, that whole situation there is kind of sticky to me, because you've got an organization that doesn't recognize DNA, but then they go off somebody else's to punish someone. And I mean, I agree these dogs need to be what we say they are, absolutely. But to me, that you either need to be on one side of the fence or the other. You can't straddle the middle of it, and that kind of seemed like that's what they's doing. It was okay to keep them in there, keep them in the OMCBA, but they didn't want to penalize the people that had them, and I understand that 100%. I get that absolutely. And I can see the thought process behind that, but I don't know why they look at another organization's DNA records to begin with. When they're not going to do it themselves. That's the part I didn't understand, I guess.
Yeah, I hate to even bring that up, honestly, just because it's I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes with it. It was a lot of drama to watch unfold on Facebook for me more than anything. But
oh, absolutely, it was, and there's been a lot done that probably shouldn't have in the past, but I will say it has made what dogs are here now better. There's no doubt about that in my mind. But now I believe they're good enough. I don't think there's anything else that probably needs put in them. And there's enough avenues. If you want to put something else in them, it's not like you're going to have to give your pups away. If you've got a good dog, it doesn't matter what they are.
Yeah, you see well-bred NSD or other just basically grade dogs that are out of other good dogs. I mean, it's not like it used to be where you couldn't hardly give them away. I mean,
oh, absolutely. And I'm not saying it was right by any means, but 15 years ago there wasn't a whole lot of other hunts to go to other than OMCBA hunt. I know PKC had a little stint in the squirrel dogs, and then USDR, and then USDC started coming on, but really it was either OMCBA or an NKC hunt. And that was about the extent, and a dog then, no question about it, was worth quite a bit more with OMCBA papers. And now I still believe everybody wants them, but as far as the gaps kind of got closed, it was in between them,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually, I got more for those Trinker puppies I bred than I did for the last OMCBA puppies I bred, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the bird dogs, they're a hot item line, I guess. Everybody likes one little bird dog in it, a good one.
Mm-hmm. I got a question for you. I've been starting to ask people that I kind of like just because I like tinkering on them. But what's your squirrel gun of choice?
Oh, and it depends where I'm at and what I'm, really, I'll pack anything from I've got an old Mossberg, I think it's a 500A 12 gauge that I actually bought at the OMCBA club one day. Man had it sitting on the side of his truck, wanted to sell it, and I bought it. But I'll carry it some, and then I've got a little Winchester Wildcat 22, and I'll carry it some. Which really, I don't kill a whole lot of squirrels. Especially if it's just I'm going to be able to hunt an hour right around the house. I very seldom kill them. It's a lot of people like to guide here at the OMCBA hunts and stuff, and really at the Spring Classic. Where they combine the high scores, you need to be guiding somewhere like where my parents live at, to tree a lot of them. Mike Powers guided in there. It's actually been, I guess it was 2 Marches ago, and I remember as a junior cast, he ended up had like 700 plus and a couple hundred circle, and said he'd had another one jump out that he didn't get scored, So I've just always tried to keep a pretty good place to squirrel hunt right here. But now I do like to go kill a few every now and again.
You mentioned the other day when we were talking that you like to compete with horses a little bit. What do you do with them?
Oh yeah, I've got some racking type horses. Some people call them single footers. I've always called them a racking horse, but I've really not got back in the groove riding too much this year. The last 2 years I'd broke a young horse. He was 3/4 Tennessee walking horse and 1/4 standard bred. Made a very nice racking horse, but it's just kind of some of them will be straightaway kind of race type things where you can't break gate, and then where I've done well has been showing in a ring, just like a style racking or speed racking type class. But no, I've always liked that. That's something I can kind of do in the summertime when I can't squirrel hunt.
Well, you got any good squirrel hunting stories for us?
Well, I've just had a lot of great times. I've met a lot of great folks, and it's really, I mean, these dogs have shaped who I am, in a big way. I've made friends all over the country that I can call, just at the drop of a hat if I needed something. I mean, I feel like I could have a blowed tire in any state, on the east side of the Mississippi, and I could call somebody and I'd have a friend there to help me in a, short amount of time. And that's as much of a blessing as you could ever get out of any dog to me, is just the people that I've met through them. It's just a great community, and they'll all jump up and help you with a phone call,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely get the sentiment. I've got a lot of my good friends that I talk to anymore on a regular basis. Most of them are a couple states away and met through dogs.
Oh, that's me too. I mean, my best friends I've met through squirrel hunting, People I talk to every day. I wouldn't know them if it wasn't for a squirrel dog. And, it's kind of wild to think about it like that, but that's really how it is. They've shaped a big part of my life, and that's as good as any squirrel hunt I could ever go on.
Well, you got any plans for the future with squirrel hunting other than just the dog you've got right now? Have which I guess we haven't talked about your coon hunting that much either.
Yeah, all the coon hunting, it's kind of went hand in hand with the squirrel hunting my whole life. But now I've gotten a lot more competitive in the coon hunts in the last, I'd say, 4 years, which I've always dabbled in it and had a decent dog here and there. But I would say in the last 4 years, I've had dogs that's kind of at another level from what I'd had before, I ended up, I had a dog that I was winning some with, and Jeff Island actually, me and him were friends through the squirrel hunting. There was a truck hunt coming up that was about 2.5 hours from where I live at. And Jeff called me out of the blue. He said, would you want to take your dog to that truck hunt? I said, well, I'd love to, but I can't give the $1,000 or whatever the entry fee was then. He said, oh, don't worry about that. He said, I'm going to pay for it, and you take that dog to that hunt. And if you're doing good, we'll split whatever we win. And it tickled me to death, and I'd been hunting my dog and had him ready. And I go up there to this hunt, and I draw the heavy hitters, the ones that are winning every weekend. And I end up, I get this dog in the top 16. I win my cast, and everybody, I can remember Joey Poston. He texted me. He said, I thought you were taking a knife to a gunfight, but you may not have been, or something like that. It was just, I guess they was all surprised I'd done well, but I knew I had a pretty good dog. And I noticed the next day before, the top 16 cast, he wasn't looking right. He didn't act like himself. And I had the dog in good shape. I thought, well, he's wore down, but ended up, I hunt him the next night in the top 16, and he got way out of pocket too fast, and it got me beat. But we had a great cast anyways. I actually got beat by a dog at Keith Sutmiller, I believe, had trained. He's a squirrel hunter too. Another man was hunting it, but is a very nice dog. And it ends up, I think it gets second in the truck hunt. The dog get beat me. But 2 or 3 weeks after that, this dog keeps looking different, and one day he just looked way different. I get him to the vet, and he had a bacterial infection, and his thyroid had shut completely down. And he stayed at the vet like 3 days, and he ended up and died, And it just, it really sucked the air out of me, because I'd bought him as just a, started young dog. He wasn't trained by no means. And I really felt like I'd made him what he was, I was attached to him, and it just kind of took the air out of me for a bit. And Jeff stayed on me after that. He said, if I buy a dog, will you hunt it? And I said, I don't want one right now, I'm going to take a break. And it went on about 2. I guess that was in November when that happened. And by the middle of January, Jeff called me one day, and he said, I just overnighted 2 checks to you. He said, one is to pick a dog up tomorrow at your local Walmart, and the other one's for you to hunt him for a month and tell me what I had. And that was the danger dog I've got now. I end up and pick him up at the Walmart from Doug Blackwell. Pay him for the dog, and I set into hunting him, and it took a little while for him to get adjusted to me, I guess, and get adjusted to where we live at and everything. It's a lot different country than what he'd come out of. And it ended up, I've made him I think he had $600 or $700 won when I got him. I've made him a platinum champion. He's actually the highest all-time money-winning English dog in pro sport now. Which I've been very blessed. I couldn't have done any of that without Jeff. He's been able to put me up and down the road when I want to go to a hunt, and he lets me. And when I don't want to go, it ain't no big deal to Jeff. He just doesn't care. He's awesome to hunt for and to be partners with and friends with. But, it's been pretty successful with that dog there, for sure,
Well, any stories come to mind yet?
Why not? I mean, like I said, it's just, I remember the friends I've made more than how I made them, and it's just all been from these old dogs, day or night, I mean, it's just, as far as anything specific, it's hard for me to think anything just right off the top of my head, winning the world hunt was probably as memorable of a cast as I've ever had. Them 4 casts, that meant a whole lot to me, and I remember it like it's yesterday, and hope I always do. But that, as far as memories, that's probably the best memories or best story was that.
Well, why don't you tell us about them?
Well, it would have been I guess the 23 World Hunt. I'd bought music from Ashley Guthrie. He was all mine at that point, and end up and enter him in the OMCBA World, and I got lucky, I believe, and won my first round. It came down to the last tree. Actually, my first cast the year I wanted it. I had to have a squirrel in there at the end to win. We hadn't had a good cast, but music was the type. He was going to keep you in the ball game. He'd be treed somewhere, And my last tree, I've got a squirrel that wins the cast for me. Another dog had treed a squirrel, but I ended up, I made a couple more trees than he had, so I advanced through it. And that was Thursday morning, and then Friday morning, I draw Tracy Rash and Gary Smith. Tracy was hunting the Josie dog of Caleb Wilson's, and Gary was hunting the Cash dog that he'd actually won the NSD World with back-to-back. So, I mean, 2 very, very nice dogs. And it was cold and raining, and end up, and Gary takes 40 minus, I think, out of the truck or pretty close, and Josie, she'd made a few trees. Cash ends up and trees a squirrel, so he's got 60 plus. I'd treed a squirrel, so that gave me 100 plus, and I had, 5 or 6 circle trees, and 2-hour cast. I win that cast, and it wasn't no secret my dog was going to get treed, and I've got to throw this out there at Eric Wiley a little bit. But Saturday morning, as we sitting there at draw out, Eric, he was in the top 9, whatever it was. And he came walking up through there by me. He said, "Hey," "I've got what you need to fix that dog for making all them trees." I said, "Oh, yeah, what's that?" He said, "A 22 bullet," and just kind of, laughed about it and cut up and went on. And, that next cast, actually, my dog, in 2 hours, I drew John Newman and Colby McCrory's Zelda female. Very nice squirrel dog, And we started this cast, and she'd treed 2 squirrels, and mine had treed 3 dens. And I thought, oh, boy, I'm in trouble, And I end up with 500 plus, and the Zelda female had 500 plus. Absolute shootout of a cast. 2 of my best friends, had come down with me on that one, helped look for squirrels. It was Tyler Miller and Jamie Bollinger had came down out of Kentucky to go on the cast with me. And, we treed 10 squirrels in that 2-dog cast. It was just a squirrel treat every time you turned around, And then that put me in the finals against John Newman hunting his Spade dog. And Kenneth Reimer was hunting Donnie McCurdy's Bad Habit female. So a great group of guys in there. And me and John's pretty good friends, pretty close. And that meant a lot to be in the finals with them. And I remember in there at the end, I had 400 plus, and I don't know, had some circle. And I think John's dog had 340 plus, and Bad Habit had 365 plus. And we're all 3 treed at the end. If I've got a squirrel, I'm a lock. They can't beat me. Well, we go to mine, and I can't find it. He's in a den. I thought, man, 3rd place ain't too bad, I guess, to get in the finals at the World Hunt. And then we go score Donnie's dog, and she didn't have one. Couldn't find it. I ain't going to say she didn't have it, but we couldn't find it. And I thought, hey, second's not too bad to be in this hunt, Reserve world champion. Then we go to John's dog. We've looked about 4 minutes, and ain't found this squirrel. Well, John, just being John, cutting up, he hollered out. He said, I got him. And I thought, you do not. And we walked around there, and sure enough, he was just pulling my leg, and he gave me a big hug and said, you've won it. And man, walking back to the truck there, that was just a surreal feeling, It made every day I'd spent out there in the rain and cold and everything is just worth it. That's what I'd wanted to win my whole life. So that meant a whole lot. And then this past year, actually, I hunted him in it again, and I ended up in the final 3 again against Bo Dooley and Jeremy Miller hunting the jet female. We had another great cast. Things just, didn't go my way this past year, and I ended up 3rd. But I thought it was neat to be in the finals back to back. And actually, I'd hunted a junior dog this past year for Gary Brown as well and got it in the finals. So I really had 2 dogs in the final 3 at the Junior World and the Senior World hunt.
Nice.
And that meant a lot to me to do that too, because I didn't win either of them, but I don't know of anyone else that's ever got a junior dog and a senior dog in the finals the same year. I'm not saying it's not been done, but I can't think of who it was that did it.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely some hunts to be proud of. Ain't no doubt about that.
No, yeah.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we wrap it up?
Well, man, I just appreciate you, wanting to take the time and call and talk to me. I've done a few of these before, and people may get tired of listening to me, but I appreciate you calling and wanting to talk to me.
Well, I appreciate your time and appreciate you agreeing to come on here and do this. This podcast has been a lot of fun for me. I really just kind of started it as an excuse to call people. I'd kind of been lurking in the shadows for a long time, just for the most part. I mean, I don't go to just a whole lot of competition hunts or anything. But I do follow most of the pages on Facebook and have for a long time, back to the days of Squirrel Dog Central and that kind of stuff. And so this has really been a good excuse for me to just actually call the people I've basically been internet stalking for years and just have conversations and talk to them. Try to learn a little bit.
Well, I've sure enjoyed it, and I believe it's good for the sport, too. I mean, not so much talking to me, but, just giving everybody an avenue to listen to stuff they may not know about or may be interested in, and, I think it's a great thing.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're probably going to call her about quits there. We're about up on time. But, man, I know I just thanked you, but I'm going to thank you again anyways. I appreciate you coming on here, Samuel.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Take care and keep wearing out that boot leather. I just want to give everyone that's listening a sincere thank you. Getting this podcast going has been a project. I really hope you're enjoying it, and if you don't mind, give the show a good rating and review wherever you're listening to it at, or share it on your social media to help get some traction. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to your feedback.